Whether we're at the Chat Sports Studios or at home, we're bringing you the latest Sixers news and rumors right here on our brand new 76ers channel by Chat Sports. So make sure you hit that red subscribe button down below because more subscribers equals more videos. We knew that Sixers fans were going to show out. Shout out to Philly. 4 straight videos of at least 2,000 views, but we want to continue to pump out more content. Plus, me, your host, Chase Sr., I'm a Philly guy. Grew up in Westchester, went to Temple. At the age of 6, went up to my mom and asked her if I could get cornrows as well as tattoos because I was such a big Allen Iverson fan. So support the channel, smash that subscribe button down below, and let's get into the latest Sixers news and rumors. Here's what we have coming up on today's show. So Damian Lillard posts a picture with maybe his future teammate Matisse Thybulle from Tokyo during the Olympics. The Sixers, according to John Hollinger of The Athletic, don't seem to be in a rush to trade Ben Simmons. And speaking of Simmons, did Daryl Morey send out a tweet that kind of indicated that he's going to keep Simmons on the roster next season, and why I think Ben Simmons is like that person in a group project who doesn't do any of the work, then gets frustrated when that group gets a bad grade. Let's get into the latest Sixers news and rumors here. So, Damian Lillard from Tokyo, following the United States winning the gold medal matchup with France, posted several pictures on Instagram that we're going to filter through here on your screen. And all of those pictures were of either Dame or his American teammates. He only posted 2 pictures with international players. One, Nicholas Batum, who just re-signed with the Los Angeles Clippers. And yes, Matisse Thybulle. I don't know of any prior relationship with Dame or Matisse Thybulle, other than the fact that Thybulle was guarding him at times during the U.S.'s game against Australia to get into the gold medal matchup against France. But we can speculate a little bit because the Damian Lillard trade rumors to Philly have been circulating for some time, and Dame did come out in speaking to the media from Tokyo and said, I'm not really happy with what the Blazers did in free agency. And they had a very silent free agency. They signed Norman Powell to a 5-year, $90 million contract. They brought in Cody Zeller. They signed Tony Snell from the Atlanta Hawks. I think Damian Lillard should be frustrated because, look, he got drafted out of Weber State back in 2012. He's gone on to have an incredible career by himself, turning into one of the best scoring guards that we've ever seen. But there's been a lack of postseason success, and there's been a lack of that front office surrounding him with premier talent outside of CJ McCollum. And here are the Blazers going into free agency this offseason with pressure on them because obviously Dame isn't happy with the lack of playoff success. And they didn't really do anything in free agency to make Dame happy. So is Damian Lillard going to request a trade? And could the Sixers be one of those teams? We talked a lot about it here on the channel, about the Sixers being one of the possible Damian Lillard destinations. I still think they'd probably have to part with a package that consists of Ben Simmons, maybe Tyrese Maxey. You might have to include Matisse Thybulle, who Dame posed in that picture with in that deal as well, and some potential future first-round picks. That's what I think it would take to get it done and bring Dame to Philly. If it were to happen, Damian Lillard, Joel Embiid, what a dominant 1-2 punch that could be. Can you envision a 2-man game with Embiid as well as Dame? Dame, when he crosses half court, is a threat to find nylon from distance. His range is unlimited. And him working a little 2-man game with Embiid, I think, could be really dangerous. And I think it's become kind of evident over time that big men and centers can't lead you on a championship run all by themselves. Even Shaquille O'Neal had Kobe Bryant and Dwayne Wade. Nikola Vucevic won the MVP this past year, but without Jamal Murray, that Nuggets team wasn't the same. Embiid has been a masterful player. He was in the mix for winning MVP this past year before he went down with that knee injury against the Wizards in the regular season. If he stays upright and healthy, maybe he is your most valuable player. But he needs help, and that help is not going to come in the form of Ben Simmons, who is allergic to shooting. Dame, Embiid, what a combination that would be in the city of brotherly love. Let me go from that to this. It looks as though the Sixers aren't in a hurry to trade Ben Simmons if that's going to be the case. According to John Hollinger of The Athletic, he said this recently in a report. First, obviously, is that despite his shortcomings, Simmons is quite good at basketball and crucially is 25 years old and signed for the next 4 seasons. Of course, the Sixers are going to ask for a lot. Secondly, the Sixers have time on their side, at least for the moment, with a full offseason to make a deal. They don't need to rush into a suboptimal one on the second day of free agency. So he said this a couple days ago. But the biggest issue is just that this is how Daryl Morey's front office has always operated, dating to his time in Houston. One thing I can tell you from the team side is that every front office has its own distinct rhythm of how it prefers to operate. Some like to get it down to brass tacks immediately. Some prefer a slower back and forth. Some are open about their desired end game. Some keep their cards closer. 1 or 2, frankly, were impossible, and you knew before picking up the phone that there was virtually no chance of completing a trade with that franchise. The bottom line is, I think Ben Simmons' value in a trade is a lot higher than what people think. There's a lot of good with Ben Simmons. He's a first-team all-defensive guy. He can lock you down 1 through 5. Thought he should have won Defensive Player of the Year ahead of a guy like Rudy Gobert, who mostly camps out around the basket down low. Simmons is a better defender than Gobert, in my opinion. Simmons on the open floor. His passing at 6'10 really is masterful. And while he's allergic to shooting the rock, because of that passing talent and passing ability and vision, his passes do lead to a lot of three-point attempts around the three-point arc, both in the half court if he's posting up in the high or low post, but also in transition as well. I think Ben Simmons is a corner 3 away from being a very, very dangerous player. The only issue with Simmons is, unlike guys like Giannis and Jaylen Brown, who is drafted in the same draft class as Simmons, Simmons has regressed offensively because he has refused to work on his offensive game and attempt shots, whereas Jaylen Brown has become a 25 points per game guy and a 40% 3 guy, and Giannis, despite the percentages not being all that great in terms of his shooting from beyond the arc, that has not held him back from being aggressive, at least attempting shots, because he realizes if he knocks down a couple of threes, it's going to help himself offensively as well as the team because it spaces out the floor a little bit when defenders don't have to sag off of you 10 to 12 feet. That's the issue with Ben Simmons. I think Simmons can get you an all-star back. Prior to last year, you were talking about him being in a package for a James Harden type of player. A couple years ago, you were talking about a Ben Simmons for Devin Booker trade. I don't think that's going to happen, but could you trade away Simmons for a guy like De'Aaron Fox, possibly Colin Sexton? If that were the case, I wouldn't hate those players on the roster if the Sixers couldn't facilitate a Damian Lillard trade. Couple more things to get to here on today's show. Is Daryl Morey planning on keeping Ben Simmons? He sent out a tweet that picked up some traction on social media. It was simply a picture about the lineup efficiency of the starting 5 that the Sixers had out there last year. Ben Simmons, Steph Curry, Danny Green, who the Sixers just brought back. We gave you a video at about 1:30 a.m. Eastern once that news broke, Tobias Harris and Joel Embiid. That starting 5, from an efficiency standpoint, was better than Utah's lineup of Mike Conley, Donovan Mitchell, Royce O'Neal, Bogdan Bogdanovic, as well as Rudy Gobert, and the Bucks starting 5 of Drew Holiday, Dante DiVincenzo, Chris Middleton, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Brook Lopez. Look, Daryl Morey likes to stir the pot a lot. We know that about Morey, and I kind of appreciate the sense of humor that he has. For him to just send out that tweet out of nowhere coming after the Danny Green signing, Does it point to the Sixers and him wanting to keep that starting five together because they realize that Ben Simmons is an all-world defender and is a corner three away from really unleashing himself as an offensive weapon, which could do so much for floor spacing on the Sixers roster, potentially? I more so think that Morey sent out that tweet after bringing back Danny Green because he realizes from a leadership standpoint, him still being a very good defender, even though he had a tough time against Trae Young, and the fact that the Sixers really missed his leadership and calming nature in that playoff series against the Hawks, that he just wanted to give Danny Green a little bit of a shout out after inking him to that contract, bringing him back, which I thought was very important, also very valuable at only $10 million per year. So I do still think that the Sixers are going to trade Ben Simmons. At what point? Not sure. I do think it's going to happen. I want you to predict it for me, though. Will the Sixers trade Ben Simmons? Get your votes in the comment section down below. Type T for trade, type K for keep. Get your predictions in down below. Lastly, back to Ben Simmons. So there's a recent report that came out about Ben Simmons cutting off all communication with the Sixers organization. They haven't been able to get in touch with him during this very critical and pivotal offseason where you've seen the Bucks come off an NBA championship. The Heat are probably a top 3 team in the East. The Nets fortified that roster in free agency as well as the draft. The Bulls got so much better. The Hawks just beat the Sixers in a playoff series. So are the Sixers in danger of going from the number 1 seed to possibly the number 6 seed because of all of the advances that other teams in the East have made and how good those rosters still are? I actually think the Sixers are in the middle of the pack in terms of the 1 through 8 seeds in the Eastern Conference. But going back to that Simmons report, I understand from a human nature standpoint why he might be frustrated with Doc Rivers and Joel Embiid kind of throwing him under the bus after Game 7 against the Atlanta Hawks when he refused to shoot and instead gave the ball up to Matisse Thybulle when he had a wide open dunk and took a total of 4 shots in the fourth quarter in all 7 games of that playoff series against the Hawks. When your teammate, your star, and your coach throw you under the bus, not easy to take. Also, Simmons went through probably one of the most brutal stretches on social media during a 24, 48-hour span. So for him to be sensitive to that, I can see why maybe he's hurt. Little sensitive? Probably. But there's also this. The reason why Doc Rivers, Embiid, and the entire fan base are frustrated with Simmons is because they see that this guy has all-world potential. When he was coming out of LSU, people were comparing him to LeBron James, and he has the physical makeup of a guy like LeBron. But Ben Simmons, since NBA Summer League, his rookie season, when he was taking elbow jumpers, baseline jumpers, attempting threes, and attempting fadeaways, has completely flatlined offensively, and his offensive game has actually regressed. Has he become a better defender? Yes. But his offensive deficiencies have cost the Sixers success in the playoffs. This goes back to when they lost to the Celtics when they first made it to the playoffs of that young core coming out of the process. The next season, Brett Brown had to relegate Ben Simmons to the dunker spot because he still refused to shoot jump shots and he let Jimmy Butler run point, and Ben Simmons was really only useful down in that dunker spot. And then this year against the Atlanta Hawks, once again, his offensive deficiencies and weaknesses were problematic and hindering for this team in the playoffs, and that's the big reason, and in my opinion, the lone reason why the Sixers went out so early in the playoffs. His free throw shooting, so abysmal. So for Ben Simmons to cut off all communication after everything that's transpired, to me, is a little bit soft. And that's why I think Ben Simmons doing this and carrying out this type of action, if it's true, in a very immature manner, is kind of like Simmons being a part of a group project growing up in school, and it's that guy who just doesn't put anything into the group project in terms of effort. and doesn't do anything to help out the rest of his teammates. Then that group gets the grade back for that project and it's an F, and that person who didn't do squat during the entire process doesn't talk to his partners anymore, and he gets all hurt that the team got a bad grade back. That's what I kind of compare this to. For Simmons to grow this sensitive, if the report is true, to some of the flack that he's received for refusing to work on his game is just flat out and utterly ridiculous, in my opinion. Because you go back to the 2016 draft, right? Ben Simmons drafted number 1. Jaylen Brown drafted 3. Ben Simmons was the more complete player and the better player at that time. That's why he went number 1. Jaylen Brown, coming out of Cal, was looked at as a raw prospect who was hyper athletic. Best case scenario, he was going to become a really good defensive player with a little bit of offensive upside. Since that point, Ben Simmons' offensive game has gone downward. Jaylen Brown, on the other hand, this past year was averaging 25 points per game and became a 40% three-point shooter, and his free throw percentage since entering the league has gone up, where Simmons has gone down. You look at a player like Giannis. When he came into the league, he was extremely raw. From an athletic profile point of view, we've never really seen a player that lengthy, who has the long strides, who kind of is in the body makeup of Giannis. But he was raw and, frankly, not that good or polished of an offensive player. But Giannis has continued to devote work and time and passion to his offensive game and him getting better. He couldn't shoot when he came into the league. He can shoot at least a little bit now. His free throw shooting has been criticized, but did you see him in Game 6 of the NBA Finals when he dropped 50 points and he only had 1 miss from the free throw line? Ben Simmons would never. Ben, people are frustrated with you because they see how much potential you have, yet you've ignored your flaws, you've refused to work on them, and because of that, the Sixers have had a lack of success in the playoffs, and they choked that series away against the Hawks in a season where everything fell in line for Philly to make a deep run. And now, going back to that conversation about the East, you were the number 1 seed in the East last year. Going into this year, you might be anywhere between 4 and 6, and you squandered a wonderful opportunity. And that was without the Celtics being a threat, who have the mental edge over you. Ben, that's why people are frustrated with you. Hope you enjoyed this latest Sixers news and rumors video right here on Chat Sports. I am your host, Chase Sr. Be sure to hit that red subscribe button down below because, once again, more subscribers, more videos. Continue to show out, Philly.